meeting is being recorded.
All right. I'm with You Can Be Free. This is your boy D with another video on You Can Be Free. I didn't mean to say I'm with You Can Be Free. I don't know why I said that. But y'all, I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I know I say that a lot when I got, okay, if y'all notice, when I say I'm not going to do a lot of talking, that means I got a powerful testimony. And this is a powerful testimony. I'm gonna let her speak for herself. I got my homegirl T with me tonight. Not necessarily with me, but we're on a Zoom call. And I heard her story. It's really powerful. I'm excited about it. I've been waiting on this all week. So I'm just gonna let her jump right in. If you want to start from the beginning, the middle, just let God just flow through you.
All righty. Hi, everybody. So I am Tashina, and I'm here basically to just tell my story. So, okay, so where you want me to start, G?
Just go from the beginning, like who you were before Christ. What led you into everything that you're gonna talk about tonight?
Okay, so I am originally from Gary, Indiana. Um, I was basically just a young girl, just lost in identity, crying out for help, but not really saying words. I'd say, like I told you, my life was pretty sad. From by the age of 12, I want to say I had already experienced uh, molestation. I had already experienced strong arm sex. I've already experienced.
Okay, when you say strong arm sex, some people are not gonna know what you're talking about. So can you explain what that means?
Strong arm sex is basically when you're forcing a girl to have sex with you outside of her will. Um, some people say rape is like an attack, and strong arm is like, okay, well, maybe, well, for me, like, say, okay, if we were like in the heat of the moment and that moment was okay, but at any point a female says no or doesn't want to do it, and you take it upon yourself to use your body weight to force her into sex, or you use your muscle, or you pull her clothes or do anything force, forcefully into sex, that's considered strong arm sex. And
Got you.
so by the time, I I was 12, 14, I had already experienced that a couple times. Um, I lost my virginity very young in age, and I had my first child at 16. And yeah, it was a lot going on. It was a lot going on. And so sex for me became, I ain't gonna say a lifestyle because it wasn't necessarily a lifestyle, but yeah, I was very promiscuous, and yeah, it was a lot.
So let me ask you this. Do you okay, so you started at a young age. Do you feel like that was because of the situations that happened to you before, or
Uh,
was okay? And let me explain what I'm trying to say. A lot of people say that when a person experience being raped or when they go through sexual experience as a young age, a lot of times they will become promiscuous because they want control over the situation. Instead of somebody taking something from them, they want to be the one that is taking something from somebody or just giving something to someone so they don't feel controlled. Do you feel like that's what happened in your situation?
oh yeah, absolutely. I think in the beginning, it was pretty much like um, that's what I realized that, well, that's what everybody wanted. It was like a let me just go back. So when you're having sex at a very young age, just opening up different things in your body that you didn't even know that you had those desires for. So at one point, your body started craving it, right? But then at another point, once you're at this point where you're having a lot of sex or whatever, you start thinking like, okay, this is what everyone wants. So in order for me to get my power back, it became a thing of, okay, well, I'm gonna take control of it and I'm gonna give it to the way I want to give it, and then I'm also gonna dismiss it the way I want it to get dismiss it. So I had to take my power back in a certain way. You know what I'm saying? It was almost like that, taking the head off of it kind of thing. Oh, that I know that's what you want. And sometimes I could even foresee certain situations about to happen. And I would almost like watch myself doing it just so I can prove that I was right in the situation. Does that make sense?
It
Like
does.
it was very much a mental um, toxic situation, but that was my life growing up. It was very toxic, and like I said, I was a young mom at 16, and by 18 I had, maybe 19, I had already had 3 kids, and by 23 failed relationships, so everything was moving very much fast, very fast. And so if it wasn't for my kids, I ended up having to grow up like really, really quickly, But at the same time, I was still very much devaluing myself, and I didn't have identity or self-esteem or anything. And if it wasn't for my kids, I don't even think that I would even be where I am today.
So, what were some of those relationships like? You said you had a lot of failed relationships. If you could just take a moment, you don't have to like go in details, but just talk about what was the relationships like.
Well, there was some abuse. I mean, I was in domestic violence relationships, rejection. You feel rejection. It was just stuff that just didn't work. I was never good enough. I always felt like I wasn't good enough. The other one always won, kind of thing. So
Right.
it was a lot of that type of thing going on.
So, some people don't understand why will a woman stay in a relationship where there is abuse, where there is physical, mental, even rape. Because even like with me, I'm a man, so I don't understand stuff like that. But me being the way that I was in my 20s, if somebody did me like that, or even my niece or my family, I'd be ready to put them to sleep
Well, see,
eternally.
that's the thing, though. So a lot of that stuff happened before the relationships happened, and then once the abuse happened, I left. So that relationship didn't stay, but um, it was still accepting abuse and not being treated fairly or kindly or with respect in some way. And I think ultimately it was because you want love, you want to feel loved. um, I always felt like I wasn't loved, or just, yeah, that's just it. I was just looking for someone to love me and see me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think what was happening was in each relationship you were trying to just make these things work?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I was a very good kid, and I grew up just wanting to have that family bond, that family and unity, and that mother-daughter relationship, father-daughter relationship. My father was always in my life. My mother was always in my life, but it was very much dysfunctional, and so I wanted someone to understand me and connect with me.
Okay. So I know that there's a transitional place in your life right uh before you had moved to Florida. I want you to talk about how was your life before God stepped in, like right before.
So right before God stepped in, I had been single for about 7 years. Me and my ex at the time, we were together for 11 years. He had passed away. I was very much going through I guess you could call it like a depressive state. Like, I was more, not necessarily like I was saddened by his loss of his death, but it was more like like I was tired of myself. You know what I mean? Like I was very beat down. I was weighty. I was heavy. Um, I have pretty much done a lot, been in a lot of like dating was hard and trying to like find my fit, if that makes sense. And it was just a lot of repeated cycles over and over and over again. You know, me and my kids, we were moving from place to place to place. And it was sad, to be honest. And so at that moment when he passed away, I remember crying out to God, like, Lord, I want to live. I want to give you my life. And I was tired. And I remember crying out to him, and it was like January 2017, I think. And yeah, it changed my life after that.
What happened after
That
that?
Well, everything kind of went on as usual. And I, you know, when you think that, well, what I thought when you go to Christ, you have to be a certain way, you have to be fixed, right? You have to be perfect, you have to be washed. So my prayer was, God, I want to give you my life, but I'm gonna get myself together. So I'm gonna give it to you in April, right? Because you know you have to be perfect for Christ, right? But like I said, nothing happened. I just kind of went on about my day, and I remember my son was graduating from high school, and his father had just got married at that time, and so I welcomed, you know, his new family over for this graduation thing. And she went home, and she called me like a couple days later. He's like, hey, she wants to talk to you. And me and her talked, and she basically spoke a word, because it had to be from God, because it don't make sense. Like, what do you think about moving to Florida? And I was just like, what? You know, like, ain't nobody trying to chase after your man. You know, I don't want him, you know, kind of thing. Cause, you know, that's what society thinks. And, you know, and yeah, and it changed the trajectory of my life.
So talk about that. Talk about what happened, because I know it. I know it, but I want you to. You can
Okay.
go ahead and
So
just
what
take your time with this.
Okay, so what happened? So, yeah, she asked me if I wanted to go to Florida. So I sent her my resume. A couple of days later, I ended up speaking to someone in HR, and um, her and I had a couple of interviews, and basically they were just like, in order for me to get this job, I had to come to Florida and come visit the campus, take my drug tests and stuff like that or whatever. But, you know, it's the 4th of July weekend. I barely got money. Mind you, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I really didn't have any money. And I was just like, no, I ain't got no money to do this. The tickets is like 500 some dollars. And so I was just like, okay. So I prayed. Mind you, you know, I knew how to pray. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know. If anything, nothing else, I could have a vacation. Because, like I said, I was tired and I needed this vacation, if nothing else. And so we were just about to get paid. And I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and buy this ticket. And so I went on and bought the ticket, 500 and some dollars. And like an hour later, this lady called me and she offered me the job. And so I was just like, okay, you know, I'm gonna be there Friday and stuff like that or whatever. And all of that was cool. And so now I'm looking for money, because I'm like, you know, I'm still very prideful. And I'm like, the last thing that I'm going to do is stay in these people's house. I need a hotel. So I'm looking for money at this time. And so I happened to just check child support to see if I was getting any child support. And I ended up having $9,999 and some random amount of change in the account. And I was just like, wait, what? So, you know, I ended up, yeah, using that money actually to square up. Long story short, you want to know like all everything that happened?
No,
Like,
I'm gonna lead you in it. So
okay,
I want to know how you got here, and then after you talk about that, then we'll go to another. You know, I'll ask you some other questions.
okay. So, I came down and I had basically already had the job, and so um, that those 4 or 5 days I was in town, me and his wife was hitting the pavement looking for places to stay.
That's what
But
I
when
want to
you
know.
Yeah, we were hitting the pavement, and she she was basically the woman that was in my ear the whole time, praying over me. Now mind you, when I was back home and I had got the funds and stuff, and I had kind of saw what God was doing, I had went ahead of God, and I was like, oh, well, I'm about to get this house. I'm about to go move in this apartment. I'm putting money down on these application fees, thinking that I'm about to go move in, and all of that got denied, and they didn't get my money back, $350. They didn't get my money back either. And so I was like, okay, so it's okay. We got a little cash, you know. And so for 4 days straight, me and her hitting the pavement, sun up, sun down. Everybody denying us, and I'm crying, and because I got evictions on my record, and I did some work, like 2 years of some work, but they was going back like 7 years, and I'm like, oh God, it's not time yet. It's not going to work out. Nothing is going to happen. Mind you, the whole time I hadn't seen my son's father the whole entire time. So on a Sunday, this is the first day I saw him. And he's like, you know what? Let's go around to this one apartment that I know. And so we went in, she stayed in the car, and him and I went in, and I filled out the application, and I'm already defeated, like, like whatever. And the lady, she kind of looking at my stuff too. You could tell she's probably like, yeah, this ain't working. And so she's like, well, it takes 24 hours for us to get something back. And I'm like, I leave tomorrow. And she was like, well, if there's anybody we can, talk to and stuff like that or whatever, we can let them know, blah, 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 blah. So we like, okay. And I'm getting ready to leave. We're leaving out. And then she's like, oh, ma'am, your application has been approved. And I'm like, wait, what? And so the first thing that I did was I was like, can I see your bathroom? Can I use your bathroom? And I went in the bathroom and I just dropped to my knees and I just started thanking God at that moment, because I knew he was doing something. I didn't know what yet, but I knew he was at work. And so everybody was like, okay, now we can kind of kick back. It's 4th of July weekend. We've been working on the whole weekend. And so they took me to Disney. And when we got to the Riverwalk, the first thing I did was dropped to my knees and I just started praising God right then and there. And so I left, and his wife, she took care of all my business for me while I was back home. And 2 weeks later, I was in Florida. But the funny part about it was we had already set up arrangements that he was going to be my driver of my U-Haul, and he ended up getting sick. And so God tested my faith. And so he was like, how much do you want it to me? And we were packed, moved, we were ready to go, and I didn't have a driver. And so at this time, I'm just like, Lord, I'm going. And so I've never driven a U-Haul before. And my sons, only one of them had a license, and my other son had came in from Minnesota. And I was just like, you know what, we gonna do this. And we hit the highway and we drove to Florida. And here we are.
Amen. So
Mhm.
I know you've had a lot of different things happen since you've been here, but at what point did you get serious about God? Because, all of us that are really serious about God, we have had something. We were at a point where we were seeking him. We kept seeking him, even though it's him who chooses us. But then there's a point where we have an encounter with him and we know this stuff is for real. What happened
Yeah.
in Florida that was just life-changing for you to where you just became who you are today? Because one thing I'll say about you is you're not an ordinary Christian, because we just got off a 7-day fast not that long ago, and you was on every single call, even the midnight calls, all of that. So people like that have had something happen. So what happened in your life since you've been here that was just like life-changing?
But I think so even when I got here, I would be lying if I said that I went straight to the church. I didn't. My friend ended up coming, and we kind of hung out a little bit, and it was kind of having fun, but it didn't feel right. And I knew that it was something more that I wanted to do, and I was like, I didn't come out here for that. And so I started looking for churches in the area, and I ended up finding an online church, but it was in Georgia. It was at Wesley Chapel, but it ended up being in Georgia. So I just started doing their Bible studies online, and I was even became an online member. I was paying tithes at one point to this church, and um, I ended up having a dream. No, no, no. Let me take that back. The dream came later. I I said I needed to go in person. Like, like I was being fed, but it just didn't sit right. I needed community. Like I wasn't going to be able to keep this thing up without just by myself. I wasn't. I needed to be taught, I needed to be discipled, and I needed community. And so that Friday, I was like, everybody was getting ready to go. My friend was going where she was going, the kids was going where they were going, and I was just at home by myself. And I said, I'm gonna go to church. And so I went to church, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to church. And I went that Friday, I went that Saturday. And then I think that Saturday they had a strawberry festival kind of thing. And I was looking into the crowd, and I was just kind of like, everybody's with their family and I'm by myself. And God is in my ear. And like, I'm like, he's putting unctions in my spirit, like I need to get baptized. And I'm just like, no, I ain't doing that. No, because I don't like a lot of attention kind of thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So I sat at the table, and I'm sitting there by myself. I got these shades on, and I'm got tears flowing up under my eyes and stuff. And some guy comes sits next to me, and he's the guy that does the baptisms for the church. And I'm like, really, really, God, you gonna sit him at my table? And I knew then he wanted me to get baptized. And so I got baptized. And from that point on, the rest is almost history.
Okay, so let's some questions I want to ask you is about the stuff that you was talking about before, the things that you went through as a child and then in abusive relationships and stuff like that. What has your healing process been like? Like, how have you, I know, like, even with my past, like, I'm still recovering from that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
because I was in the world a lot longer than I was saved, a lot longer than I have
Mm.
been saved. So what has your process been like with healing and deliverance? And I'm asking you this so somebody can know, like, well, I've been through what she's been through. So how can they get help? How have God helped you?
Well, to be honest, a lot of my healing started before I got saved. I had to realize, first of all, I do deserve better than this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so before I got saved, that's why I started speaking. Like, if I didn't value myself, I knew my kids deserved better than that. So my kids were my anchor at that time. So I wouldn't let certain people around, if they start talking a certain type of way. No, they're not good enough for my sons. They're not good enough for my sons. After I got saved, God began to renew my mind, and he started talking to me in that repeated cycle over and over and over again, telling me that I was valuable, right? But it wasn't even, I had to do some of that hard work behind the scenes. I had to get on my knees and cry. I had to write stuff out. I had to be honest. I had to, because I wasn't always a victim. Some of that stuff was me. Some of that stuff was my choices. Some of that stuff was the people I was with, and some of the stuff I was doing. So I couldn't be the victim all the time. I had to take responsibility, and I had to write that stuff out and just even apologize to myself, right? And then I had to get some help, like, right? Like some serious help, like, and some accountability with some real people who can actually help me. And a lot of it was God. He kept me by myself too. When I moved out here, I was completely by myself. I was dependent on nobody but God. Nobody but God. And a lot of that healing and crying, they call it that wilderness season. That's a real thing. Like, I was literally by myself. And I had to depend on God for my everything, because I ain't had no whole lot of money. Florida was more expensive than Indiana. And he had to be my resource for everything, my counsel, my friends, my everything. He had to send those people to me. And so a lot of times what we tend to do is be hard-hearted, where we don't even want to invite people in. And God, sometimes he sends certain people to us to help us along the way. And that's what he did. One of the things that I remember, for when God was trying to reach out to me, he came to me in the way that I received love. He showed me the work of his hand first. It was, I always say, I say, God, you got a little pimp in you. I said, because what you did was you gave me your hand before you showed me who you were. And you was like, oh no, I could take care of this. I could take care of that. I could take care of this. And then once I was able to trust him, then he was like, okay, now let me show you who I really am. And
Mm.
that's what he did. And that's what he did for me. He took care, he provided for me and my children. And even when my car got repossessed, he still provided a way. He provided transportation. He provided everything I needed. When I didn't have food, he provided those things to me. And then once I was able to trust him on a whole nother level, that's when he showed me who he was. And then that's when he began to show me who I was.
You said a lot of good stuff. So I'm just going to back up on some stuff that you said, because you dropped some bombs. One thing that you was talking about is you was talking about the right people. You had accountability with the right people. And people need to hear that, because sometimes people will just partner up with anybody, people that are unqualified to deal with your situations. And
Yeah.
some of the best people that you can talk to is, for one thing, people that are, they don't have to be old, but people that have been through some stuff, because people that have been through some stuff carry wisdom. And you need to be
Mm-hmm.
around people that is going to tell you the truth. You also said that you were able to admit your wrongs. And that was
Yeah.
like my beginning stages of deliverance, is I had to admit, because I used to blame life for me acting the way that I act, or blame the fact that my mom died and that's why I was acting the way, or certain family members who didn't do or did do certain things. And I was just like, no, I got here in this situation because of me. Even though we do have circumstances that happen to us that we can't
Yeah.
help, it's our response to those circumstances that make things worse.
Yeah.
You also had said that you realized that you wasn't a victim. And I think sometimes people just play the victim too much, and that can keep us in bondage. And when you were talking about the wilderness season, that's one thing that I realized about the wilderness season, being in a place, because people don't know what that is, but, or some people don't know what that is, but just being in a place in our lives where you don't have nobody but God. And that's a
Mhm.
good place to be in, because me and you kind of got, certain situations, because I have no family here. I barely have real friends here. I only got like a few. And that's where God wants us, because that's where we found out who he is. That's when we figure out that's when we find out that he's a father, that he's a lover, that he's a keeper, that he's a deliverer, he's a way maker, he's a provider. And the thing is,
Yeah.
you have to be in certain type of situations, because we don't want to go through nothing, but you have
Yeah.
to be in certain situations. He will allow certain things to happen just so he can show us who he is and what he can do. So I
Yeah.
love that. We got 10 minutes left. If you would, I want you to talk about, I'm gonna ask you two questions.
Okay.
Um, and well, I'm gonna ask you three questions real quick before we get to the last thing. I want to ask you, um, what has your deliverance process been like? Like, a lot of people don't know about deliverance, and I know you've been doing self deliverance, what we call it. Can you talk about that for anybody that wants to know? Like, okay, well, I've lived a certain type of life, and I need deliverance. Can you talk about your experience with deliverance?
Well, for me, my deliverance came at home, pretty much in my shower. I say my shower is anointed, y'all. But my deliverance came at home, but it actually came at a time when my heart was broken. And I remember crying out to God, like, Lord, why do I keep going? Like, I gave you my life, and I'm doing everything right by the book, quote unquote. I'm not out here being ratchet. And then I'm still brokenhearted. Like, this isn't fair. And so I remember crying out to God, and I just kind of surrendered it all, right? And at that point, it was just like, what I realized is that although I received salvation, I didn't receive what the cross is meant to do. And it was supposed to free me, and it didn't. I was still going by religion standpoint, meaning go to church, serve, come home, go to church, serve, come home, quote a few scriptures, but I'm still not touching the problem. And what it was is that Jesus, he says that we're free. He knew what I was going to do, right? And it is not to abuse grace or anything like that, but he already knew that I was going to mess up. And not to condemn myself so much when I mess up, but accept the blood of Jesus that covers all, right? And to be able to walk in the freedom of who I am, like, yeah, I love you, girl. I died for you when you was a sinner. And so that deliverance happened when I was able to actually receive the cross. That's how I got free. Like, and I stopped having to lie or say I'm not okay when, or say I'm okay when I'm not okay, or whatever, because I didn't want to look a certain way in church. Or if I am still struggling with this sin or that sin, but I don't want to say that to my brothers and sisters because I don't want to look a certain way in church. No, I'm free. And I have the freedom to say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. God is still working on me with this, you know, and not to abuse the grace, but to walk in the confidence that he's going to perfect everything in me, you know, and that's how I got delivered.
That's so real right there. Because one thing I love about you is you up here, you sharing stuff that a lot of people would not talk about, but there's a liberty where you can just be free to be yourself in Christ. And so many people are scared to be them true selves. And I was just thinking not that long ago, like, I can understand people in high school being embarrassed when you want to put a mask on. But when we get a certain type of age, like, there's no way that I can act a fool in my 20s, embarrass myself every single weekend and not care what people think, but then get saved and do the best that I can, trying to live for God, and then worry about what people think. And see, a lot of Christians don't have that freedom because they don't know who they are, or they're trying to sound like certain type of people, or they're trying to impress certain type of people, So the last thing that I want to ask you is this. What advice would you have for men and women? Because when it comes to the men, a lot of men don't understand when you talk about strong arm, when you talk about forcible sex, we don't really realize, especially younger guys, that what we're doing in the heat of the moment. And when we do stuff like that, it affects women. Like, y'all are our queens, and it has long-term effects. And we reap what we sow. So we can have daughters going through the same thing, uh, and so what advice would you have for the man, and then also for women who are living that lifestyle and feel like they can't get out of it? You can answer the question about the men first, and then talk to the women.
Well, for men, I would first say that you are loved and we love you. We respect you and we need you, but we also need you to respect us. When we say no, stop. I don't care if everything is going good in the moment. I don't care at what point. If you're already entry, if she say stop, you have to stop. And get some self control about yourself, because guess what? This damages us. I've been dealing with this. I'm 43 and I've just now gotten free 2 years ago. So that's a lot of years of turmoil that I didn't have to deal with. So stop. That's what I would say. Stop.
What about for women that are feeling like they have to give themselves away because they're looking for love, or because they don't love themselves, and they are just confused, and they feel like nobody won't love them unless they do this? Because you're actually engaged now. So you're about to get married, and I ain't gonna say all your business, but when you're gonna get married. But anyways, speak to the women. We got 3 minutes left.
What I would say for the women is, number one, and this is something that I had to find out, but only God can give you identity, purpose, security, and acceptance. Only God can give you that. And in my younger years, that's all I was looking for. I was looking for those four things. And I learned that God gives that to us. Desperation makes us settle. And so I'm so thankful that um, I was able to learn that. Um, Value yourself. And even if you find something to glean to, because a lot of times, like I said, my children ended up being the source that I gleaned and realized that they needed something more. So find something to glean to. If you have a dream, or if you have something, glean to that, because that takes you out of your circumstance. Reach toward that dream. Reach toward that mark. If there's a woman or someone that you like, even if you don't know them, reach toward it. Surround yourself with people who you want to become, and that'll take you out of your circumstances. Pray. Even if you don't know how to pray, pray. Jesus says that he's our friend. So talk to him as a friend. Pray. Because that's what kept me all those years is, I prayed the way I knew how to pray, and he covered me. So pray. And girl, you got this. You are resilient, honey. Because if you in that life, baby, I know you know how to move and shake. So you got this. But rise up, baby. You got it.
Amen. Amen. I'm really proud of you. I don't know what to say. You done said it. You done said it. You done said it. And I'm proud of you. I thank you for your story. I thank you for your testimony. And I thank you for your time. When can we look? We only got like just 1 minute. If you can talk about your podcast that you're going to be starting
Yeah, my
soon.
podcast is actually out. I just need to relaunch it, but it's called Are You Tashina Too? And it's basically just for anybody who may have had a past like me or growing through development like me. And, I'm just asking you, honey, are you like me too? And so it's on Spotify, it's on all the sources. You can find it, Google Play, everywhere.
All right. So I'm going to be pushing her, y'all, to get that started. Well, I ain't going to be pushing her, but I will be encouraging her. Again, I want to thank you for your time. You did good on time because this woman can talk. So I was scared she was going to go over the time, but you did good. So I hope this message encouraged anybody who's watching this. As I always say, you can be free because who the Son has set free is free indeed. We love y'all and we are out.